Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, as you can see on your screen, today we are going to cover chapter number 11 of Trading in the Zone, and this is the final chapter. And as the name suggests, the name of the chapter is Thinking Like a Trader. And since this is a final chapter and its length is around 22 pages, so we'll cover it in two parts. So, in today's part, we'll cover the first 11 pages, and in the next one, we'll cover the remaining ones. That's the idea. Let's see how much we can cover in this one. Okay, that's a broader idea what we are going to do today. Okay, and in case if anyone is joining for the first time, so this is a book based on trading psychology by Sir Mark Douglas, and we have already covered the last 10 chapters, so you can check it out in the playlist Trading Psychology. And there is another playlist, like in the same playlist you will find the another book which is Disciplined Trader, that is also by Sir Mark Douglas. So we'll go through it, and it is going to be a very beneficial one. And it's like a journey that we all are doing together. Okay. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it. So the name of the chapter is Thinking Like a Trader. In the last chapter, we have already covered like how the belief system works and how it has impact on trading, right? And today we are learning that how like we should be thinking as a trader. Thinking like a trader is the name of the chapter. If you ask me to distill trading down to its simplest form, I would say that it is a pattern recognition number game. We use market analysis to identify the patterns, define the risk, and determine when to take profits. Okay, that's the general idea according to Sir Mark Douglas, who holds a great experience in the stock market. Okay, all right. Now, moving ahead, the next one will be like if I'll go ahead, the trade either works or it doesn't. In any case, we go on to die next trade. Okay, it's that simple, but it's certainly not easy. In fact, trading is probably the hardest thing you'll ever attempt to be successful at. That's not because it requires intellect, quite the contrary, but because the more you think, the less successful you'll be. Trading is hard because you have to operate in a state of not having to know, even though your analysis may turn out at times to be perfectly correct. To operate in a state of not having to know, you have to properly manage your expectations. To properly manage your expectation, you must realign your mental environment so that you believe without a shadow of doubt in the five fundamental truths. In this chapter, I'm going to give you a training exercise that will integrate these truths about the market at a functional level in your mental environment. In the process, I'll take you through the three stages of development of a trader. The first stage is the mechanical stage. In this stage, you build the self trust necessary to operate in an unlimited environment. Learn, like the second point, learn to flawlessly execute a trading system. Third, train your mind to think in probabilities, the five fundamental truths. Fourth, create a strong, unshakable belief in your consistency as a trader. All right. Once you have completed this first stage, you can then advance to the subjective stage of trading. In this stage, you use anything you have ever learned about the nature of market movement to do whatever it is you want to do. There's a lot of freedom in this stage. So you'll have to learn how to monitor your susceptibility to make the kind of trading errors that are the result of your unresolved self valuation issues I referred to in the last chapter. The third stage is the intuitive stage. Trading intuitively is the most advanced stage of development. It is the trading equivalent of earning a black belt in the martial arts. The difference is that you can't try to be intuitive because intuition is spontaneous. It doesn't come from what we know at a rational level. The rational part of our mind seems to be inherently mistrustful of information received from a source that it doesn't understand. Sensing that something is about to happen is a form of knowing that is very different from anything we know rationally. I've worked with many traders who frequently had a very strong intuitive sense of what was going to happen next, only to be confronted with the rational part of themselves that consistently argued for another course of action. Of course, if they had followed their intuition, they would have experienced a very satisfying outcome. Instead, what they ended up with was usually very unsatisfactory, especially when compared with what they otherwise perceived as possible. The only way I know of that you can try to be intuitive is to work at setting up a state of mind most conducive to receiving and acting on your intuitive impulses. The mechanical stage. The mechanical stage of trading is specially designed to build the kind of trading skills, trust, confidence, and thinking probabilities that will virtually compel you to create consistent results. I define consistent results as a steadily rising equity curve with only minor drawdowns that are the natural consequences of edges that didn't work. Other than finding a pattern that puts the odds of a winning trade in your favor, achieving a steadily rising equity curve is a function of systematically eliminating any susceptibility you may have to making the kind of fear, euphoric or self-valuation based trading errors. I've described throughout this book. Eliminating the errors and expanding your sense of self-valuation will require the acquisition of skills that are psychological in nature. Okay, I hope you all are understanding why we are doing what we are doing, right? So you always need to have this clarity in your mind that why we are doing a particular thing. Whatever we are doing in our life, you should have a clearer answer to that why, because as you're clear in your mind, you can do anything. So nowadays, I'll give you a very basic example. So there was an era of TikTok in India where we used to find a lot of things as cringe. But even though we are finding out it as cringe content, still it has a great audience, right? The creators of TikTok, they're earning a lot of money out of it, and they're getting a huge number of following, right? So there must be a lot of people who are following it, right? So since the creators were clear with the why, they did what they did and they got the success because of it. No matter if a set of people find it cringe, or you know a lot of people made fun of it, whatever the situation was, they were clear with their whys and they kept on doing it even after they were getting a lot of resistance from the external environment. It doesn't bother them a much, right? So that's why is very important to have clarity in your belief system. Once you'll work on your belief system, once your belief system is aligned with the direction you want to work on, then you'll get the result, then you'll get the desired success or whatever you are praying for in a well within timeline. Okay, so that's the easiest way out. And you need not to change anything in the outside environment. All you have to do is change your inner environment so that you can perceive the things in a different manner. Okay, openness to changes are very important. Like it is very important in life in general also. Okay, eliminating the errors and expanding your sense of self valuation will require the acquisition of skills that are all psychological in nature. The skill are psychological because each one in its purest form is simply a belief. Remember that the beliefs we operate out of will determine our state of mind and shape our experiences in ways that constantly reinforce what we already believe to be true. How truthful a belief is related to the environmental conditions can be determined by how well it serves us. That is the degree to which it helps us satisfy our objectives. If producing consistent result is our primary objective as a trader, then creating a belief, a conscious, energized concept that resists changes and demands expression, that I am a consistently successful trader, will act as a primary source of energy that will manage your perceptions, interpretations, expectations, and actions in ways that satisfy the belief and consequently the objective. Okay, so that's one way of doing it, or like it's a start, to be very precise. Okay, now moving ahead. Great. Creating a dominant belief that I am a consistently successful trader requires adherence to several principles of consistent success. Some of these principles will undoubtedly be in direct conflict with some of the beliefs you have already acquired about trading. Very, very, very important, right? That means the fight is within. You have to fight with, or you have to take the energy out of those beliefs that is already part of your, you know, belief system, and they are resisting, they are hindering in one way or another to the path of success or getting the required result or expected results out of trading. Okay, if this is the case, then what you have is a classic example of beliefs that are in direct conflict with desire. The energy dynamic here is no different from what it was for the boy who wanted to be like the other children who were not afraid to play with dogs. He desired to express himself in a way that he found, at least initially, virtually impossible. To satisfy his desire, he had to step into an active process of transformation. His techniques his technique was simple. He tried as hard as he could to stay focused on what he was trying to accomplish, and little by little he deactivated the conflicting belief and strengthened the belief that was consistent with his desire. At some point, if that is your desire, then you will have to step into the process of transforming yourself into a consistent winner. When it comes to personal information transformations, the most important ingredients are willingness to change, the clarity of your intent, and the strength of your desire. Both are very, very important. So this is like the final working stage of whatever we have learned so far in this chapter and this book, to be very precise, right? Okay. All right. Just give me 1 second. Hmm. Now, moving ahead, ultimately, for this process to work, you must choose consistency over every other reason or justification you have for trading. If all of these ingredients are sufficiently present, then regardless of the internal obstacle you find yourself up against, what you desire will eventually prevail. Very, very important. Right. Take a note of it, guys. These things are very important, right? You need to understand it and you can write it down in your own words. That is completely fine. But I hope you are getting the gravity of it. You are understanding the gravity of it. The first step, okay, observe yourself. Very, very, very important. The first step is the process of creating consistency is to start noticing what you're thinking, saying, and doing. Why? Because everything we think, say, or do as a trader contributes to and therefore reinforces some belief in our mental system. Okay, because the process of becoming consistent is psychological in nature, it shouldn't come as a surprise as it shouldn't come as a surprise that you'll have to start paying attention to your various psychological processes. The idea is eventually to learn to become an objective observer of your own thoughts, words, and deeds. Your first line of defense against committing a trading error is to catch yourself thinking about it. Very important. Right. Now we are more or less talking about the solution or the action steps. So this is very important, everyone. Please have your complete focus over here. Of course, the last line of defense is to catch yourself in the act. If you don't commit yourself to becoming an observer to these processes, your realizations will always come after the experience, usually when you are in a state of deep regret and frustration. Observing yourself objectively implies doing it without judging about yourself. Okay, all right, you need not to judge yourself. You just have to observe yourself so that you can align it with the required belief system to get the required result or the success or getting profits in this particular scenario of trading. This might not be as easy for some of you to do, considering the harsh judgmental treatment you may have received from the other people throughout your life. As a result, one quickly learns to associate any mistake with emotional pain. No one likes to be in a state of emotional pain, so we typically avoid acknowledging what we have learned to define as a mistake for as long as possible. Yeah, I am feeling it. Right. So today I made another video on analyzing my mistakes and seeking solution around it, and it's like I made it in Hindi. So the thing is, while I was making it, I was I had to put more efforts. I had to put more willpower to make it. I was not feeling it to, analyze mistakes and do it. I know it is a necessary thing to do to ultimately get a solution and get trading rules, and I have to abide by those rules to get the success that I'm aspiring to get. But I find it very draining. So here, when I'm reading a book, even some days, like mostly all days, if you'll see the duration of my video, it is around 1 hour, and it is a single take video, right? I'm not making any cuts, I'm not editing at all. It's simply I'm starting to record and I'm speaking and speaking, and at the end I'm just closing it. Okay, whatever I did in between, I'm completely in it. I'm not, you know, what I can say, editing anything out of it. At least till now, whatever videos I made, I never edit any of them. So the point that I'm trying to prove is mostly you'll see the reading videos or the trading psychology videos in which I'm covering a book or a chapter of that particular book. Then it is of an average length 1 hour mostly, and I'm not feeling that draining in nature. But when I was doing that analysis part, no, so there is one PPT that I made out of the analysis that I made from the live trading videos that I have made in past. So while I was doing it, I didn't feel like doing it for a longer enough time. I was feeling a little bit drained and not willing to do it. So there is some kind of resistance that I was feeling. Okay, I'll try to do it uh, multiple times and see what's the exact issue behind it. And even though I recorded it today, but I was procrastinating this very task from the last few days. So yeah, I have to figure out what is the problem behind it, right? So the video that I recorded for analyzing my mistakes was of 37 minutes, and here I on an average I'm putting 1 hour. So that means while I was analyzing my mistakes, there is something that is getting attached to the emotional pain. And as a defense mechanism, even though I have suppressed it to some extent, but still it is there, right? So it is getting kicked in once or twice or sometimes, and it is draining my energy out of it, right? So yeah, that's the point that I wanted to make. But it is a necessary thing. So I'll do it. I did it in the past, and I will do it again. Not confronting, sorry, not confronting mistakes in our everyday lives usually don't doesn't have the same disastrous consequences it can have if we avoid confronting our mistakes as traders. Very important, right? So in our day-to-day life, maybe we are committing some mistakes and we are avoiding it. We are not, confronting it in one way or another. But our life is going as smooth as, like, it is not creating much problem over there. But in trading, it will create a bigger problem. Okay. For example, when I'm working with flow traders, the analogy I use to illustrate how precarious a situation they are in is to ask them to imagine themselves walking across a bridge over the Grand Canyon. The width of the bridge is directly related to the number of contracts they trade. So, for example, for one contract trader, the bridge is very wide, say 20 feet. A bridge 20 feet wide allows you a great deal of tolerance of error. So, you don't have to be in inordinately careful or focused on each step you take. Still, if you do happen to stumble and trip over the edge, the drop to the canyon floor is 1 mile. I don't know how many people would walk across a narrow bridge with no guardrails where the ground is a mile down, but my guess is relatively few. Similarly, few people will take the kinds of risk associated with trading on the floor of the future exchanges. Certainly, a one contract flow trader can do a great deal of damage to himself, not unlike falling off a mile high bridge, but a one contract trader also can give himself a wide tolerance for errors, miscalculation, or usually violent market moves where he could find himself on the wrong side. On the other hand, one of the biggest flow traders I ever worked with trades for his own account with an average position of 500 treasury bond futures at a time. He often puts on a position of well over 1,000 contracts. A position of 1,000 T bond contracts amount to 31,500 per tick, the smallest incremental price change that a bond contract can make. Of course, T bond futures can be very volatile and can trade several ticks in either direction in a matter of seconds. As the size of a trader's position increases, the width of our bridge over the Grand Canyon narrows. In the case of the large bond trader, the bridge has narrowed to the size of a thin wire. Obviously, he has to be extremely well balanced and very focused on each step that he takes. The slightest misstep or gust of wind could cause him to fall off the wire. Next stop, 1 mile down. Now, when he is in the trading pit, that tiny misstep or slight gust of wind is the equivalent to one distracting thought. That's all. Just a thought or anything else where he allows himself to lose his focus for even a second or two. In that moment of distraction, he could miss his last favorable opportunity to liquidate his position. The next price level with enough volume to take him out of his trade could be several ticks away, either creating a huge loss or forcing him to give a substantial winning trade back to the market. If producing consistent result is a function of eliminating errors, then it is an understatement to say that you will encounter great difficulty in achieving your objective if you can't acknowledge a mistake. Okay, so you have to acknowledge your mistake and try to avoid it as much as possible. It is a much needed thing. It is not something that you can what I can say acquire. It is a must thing to do. Okay, now obviously this is something very few people can do, and it accounts for why there are so few consistent winners. In fact, the tendency not to acknowledge a mistake is so pervasive throughout mankind, it could lead one to assume that it's an inherent characteristics of human nature. I do not believe this is the case, nor do I believe we are born with the capacity to ridicule or think less of ourselves for making a mistake, miscalculation, or error. Making mistakes is a natural function of living and will continue to be until we reach a point at which all our beliefs are in absolute harmony with our desires and all our beliefs are structured in a way that they are completely consistent with what works for the environment's perspective. Obviously, if our beliefs are not consistent with what works for the environment perspective, the potential for making a mistake is high, if not inevitable. We won't be able to perceive the appropriate set of steps to our objective. Worse, we won't be able to perceive that what we want may not be available or available in the quantity we desire or at the time when we want it. Okay, let me go through it once again because it is very important. All right, so making mistakes is a natural function of living and will continue to be until we reach a point at which all our beliefs are in absolute harmony with our desires and all our beliefs are structured in such a way that they are completely consistent with what works for the environment's perspective. Okay, obviously, if our beliefs are not consistent with what works for from the environment perspective, the potential for making a mistake is high, if not inevitable. We won't be able to perceive the appropriate set of steps to our objective. Worse, we won't be able to perceive that what we want may not be available or available in the quantity we desire or at the time when we want it. On the other hand, mistakes that are the results of beliefs that are in conflict with our objectives aren't always apparent or obvious. We know they will act as opposing forces, expressing their versions of the truth on our subconscious or consciousness, sorry, and they can do that in many ways. The most difficult to detect is a distracting thought that causes a momentary lapse in focus or concentration. On the surface, this may not sound significant, but as in the analogy of the bridge over the canyon, when there's a lot at stake, even a slightly diminished capacity to stay focused can result in an error of disastrous proportions. The principle applies whether it's trading, sporting events, or computer programming. When our intent is clear and undiminished by any opposing energy, then our capacity to stay focused is greater, and the more likely it is that we will accomplish our objective. Very important. Take a note of it, guys. So this principle applies whether it's trading, sporting events, or computer programming. Okay. When our intent is clear and undiminished by an opposing energy, then our capacity to stay focused is greater, and more likely it is that we will accomplish our objective. Okay, all right. Let me take a note of it. That's important. Okay, great. Now, earlier I defined a winning attitude as a positive expectation of our efforts with an acceptance that whatever results we do get we do get are a perfect reflection of our level of development and what we need to learn to do better. What separates the consistently great athletes and performers from everyone else is their distinct lack of fear of making a mistake. Consistently great athletes and performers from everyone else is that great. Lack of fear. We are not saying the lack of mistake. We are saying lack of fear of making mistake. That's very important, right? They're not taking any performance pressure and stuff. It will be there, like, but they have taken energy out of this. Is how we can describe it in best way possible. The reason they aren't afraid is that they don't have a reason to think less of themselves when they do make a mistake, meaning they don't have a reservoir of negatively charged energy waiting to develop and pounce on their conscious thought process like a lion waiting for the right moment to pounce on its intended prey. What accounts for this uncommon capacity to quickly move beyond their errors about criticizing error without criticizing themselves? One explanation may be that they grew up with extremely unusual parents, teachers, and coaches who, by their word and examples, taught them to correct their miscalculation and error with genuine love, affection, and acceptance. I say extremely unusual because many of us grew up with just the opposite experience. We were taught to correct our mistake or miscalculation with anger, impatience, and a distinct lack of acceptance. Is it possible that for the great athletes, their past positive experience with respect to mistakes caused them to acquire a belief that mistakes simply point the way to where they need to focus their efforts, grow, and improve themselves? With a belief like that, there's no source of negatively charged energy and consequently no source of self denigrating or sabotaging thought. However, the rest of us who did grow up experiencing a plethora of negative reactions to our actions would naturally acquire beliefs about mistakes. Mistakes must be avoided at all costs. There must be something wrong with me if I may make a mistake. I must be a screw up or I must be a bad person if I make a mistake. Remember that every thought, word, and deed reinforces some belief we have about ourselves. If by repeated negative self-criticism, we acquire a belief that we are screw-ups, that belief will find a way to express itself in our thoughts, causing us to become distracted and to screw up on our words, causing us to say things about ourselves or about others if we notice the same characteristics in them that reflects our belief and our actions, causing us to behave in a ways that are overtly self-sabotaging. If you are going to become a consistent winner, mistakes can't exist in the kind of negatively charged context in which they are held by most people. Okay, so you have to take out the energy from this self-sabotaging thoughts, is what author is trying to convey here. All right, you have to be able to monitor yourself to some degree, and that will be difficult to do if you have the potential to experience emotional pain if and when you find yourself in the process of making an error. If this potential exists, you have two choices. First, you can work on acquiring a new set of positively charged belief about what it means to make a mistake, along with deactivating any negatively charged beliefs that would argue otherwise or cause you to think less of yourself for making a mistake. Second, if you find this first choice undesirable, you can compensate for the potential to make errors by the way you set up your training regime. This means, okay, let's go through the second point once again. If you find this first choice undesirable, you can compensate for the potential to make errors by the way you set up your trading regime. All right. Hmm. This means that if you're going to trade and not monitor yourself, but at the same time you desire consistent results, then trading exclusively from the mechanical stage will resolve the dilemma. Otherwise, learning how to monitor yourself is a relatively simple process once you have rid yourself of negatively charged energy associated with mistakes. In fact, okay, hell no. My voice is not getting recorded or what? Am I not getting? Wait a second. All right, just give me 1 second, okay? I'll disconnect and connect it. Hello, 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 hello. Okay, how would I know if my screen is getting recorded or not? My voice is getting recorded or not? I hope it is getting recorded, right? Okay, let's just thought it in a positive manner because I have already checked and it shows that it is getting recorded. So I'll go ahead with this thought. In case if it is not getting recorded, I'll record this whole video once again. No worries. All right, let's go back to the screen. Hmm. 1 second. Let's stop sharing first and then share again. Fine. As we promised, we'll cover till page number 132, I guess. So 4 to 6 pages more to go. All right, that's not bad. Otherwise, learning how to monitor yourself is relatively simple across. Hello, 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 hello. Hello. I think there is some issue. Hello, 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 hello. Man, oh man. Okay, let me get it fixed first. Otherwise, it will not. All right, I hope everything's working fine. I checked all the technical things. Okay, so let's move ahead. Why I'm doing it, it might, look very, what I can say, unprofessional to you guys, but in one of my videos, in the last 7 minutes, my voice, even though I was speaking, but my voice is not at all audible in the video itself because of some technical glitch. So, you know, that past experience is getting a test to the current scenario. But I'm being objective. I checked all the scenarios. I checked if the mic is working fine, if the headset is working fine or not, and I'm finding it completely working. So yeah, I'm back here. Hmm. So what exactly I was talking about? This means if you're going to trade and not monitor yourself, but at the same time you desire consistent results, then trading exclusively from the mental stage will resolve the dilemma. Otherwise, learning how to monitor yourself is a relatively simple process. Once you have rid yourself of negatively charged energy associated with mistakes, in fact, it's easy. All you have to do is decide why you want to monitor yourself, which means you first need to have a clear purpose in mind. When you are clear about purpose, simply start directing your attention to what you think, say, or do. Okay. All right. Let me just take a note of it. All right. Hmm. Now, moving ahead, the next thing is, if and when you notice that you are not focused on your objective or on the incremental steps to accomplish your objective, choose to redirect your thoughts, words, or actions in a way that is consistent with what you're trying to accomplish. Okay. So, like while you're trading, just keep on asking yourself question, if I am following rules, if I'm being objective here. If the answer is no, then channelize your energy in the right direction and try to, you know, uh, make it work. If you find it very difficult, you know, just close your system and say, okay, I'm done for today. All right. Keep redirecting as often as necessary. The more willfully you engage in this process, especially if you can do it with some degree of conviction, the faster you will create a mental framework free to function in a way that is consistent with your objectives without any resistance from conflicting beliefs. Okay, understood. All right. Now, This is something we understood. Now, moving ahead to the role of self discipline. I call the process I just described self discipline. I define self discipline as a mental technique to redirect as best we can mm, our focus of attention to the object of our goals or desire, where the goal or desire conflicts with some other component belief of our mental environment. Okay, just keep on doing it again and again until and unless it becomes a part of your mental framework. All you have to do is make it a part of your mental framework. As it'll become the part of the mental framework, then it is like a cakewalk to you. Okay, this is I'm telling you from my own experience also. It might take some time, but that will all be worth it. The first thing you should notice about this definition is that self discipline is a technique to create a new mental framework. It is not a personality trait. People aren't born with self discipline. In fact, when you consider how I define it, being born with discipline isn't even possible. However, as a technique to be used in the process of personal transformation, anybody can choose to use self discipline. Here is an example from my life that illustrates the underlying dynamics of how this technique works. In 1978, I decided that I wanted to become a runner. I don't exactly remember what my underlying motivation was, except that I had spent the previous 8 years in a very inactive lifestyles. I wasn't involved in any sports or hobbies unless you call watching yourself watching television a hobby. Previously, in both high school and at least part of college, I was very active in sports, especially ice hockey. However, coming out of college, my life was unfolding in the way that was very different from what I had expected. It is not to be liking, but at the time I felt powerless to do anything about it. This led to a period of inactivity, which is a nice way of saying that I was severely depressed. Again, I'm not sure what prompted me to suddenly want to become a runner. Maybe I saw some TV program and sparked my interest. I do, however, remember that the motivation was very strong. So I went out and bought myself some running shoes, put them on, and went out to run. The first thing I discovered was that I couldn't do it. I didn't have the physical stamina to run more than 50 or 60 yards. This was very surprising. I didn't realize, nor would I have ever believed that I was so out of shape that I couldn't run even 100 yards. This realization was so disheartening that I didn't attempt to run again for 2 or 3 weeks. 2 or 3 freaking weeks. The next time, I still couldn't run more than 50 or 60 yards. I tried again the next day with, of course, the same result. I became so discouraged about my deteriorated physical condition that I didn't run again for another 4 months. Now it's the spring of 1979. I'm once again determined to become a runner, but at the same time, very frustrated with my lack of progress. As I was contemplating my dilemma, it occurred to me that one of my problems was that I didn't have a goal to work towards. Saying that I wanted to be a runner was great, but what did that mean? I really didn't know. It was too vague and abstract. I had to have something more tangible to work towards. So I decided that I want to be able to run 5 miles by the end of the summer. 5 miles seemed insurmountable at the time, but thinking that I might be able to do it generated a lot of enthusiasm. This increased level of enthusiasm gave me enough uh, impetus to run 4 times that week. At the end of this first week, I was really surprised to discover even a little bit of exercise improved my stamina and ability to run a little farther each time. This created even more enthusiasm. So I went out and bought a stopwatch and blank book to be used as a running diary. I set up a 2 mile course and marked off each quarter mile in the diary. I entered the date, my distance, my time, and how I felt physically each time I ran. I thought I was well on my way to the 5 miles until I literally ran into my next set of problems. The biggest were the conflicting and distracting thoughts that flooded my consciousness every time I decided to wanted to go out and run. I was amazed at the number and intensity of the reason I found for not doing it. It's hot or cold outside. It looks like it's going to rain. I'm still a little tired from the last time I ran. Even though it was 3 days ago, nobody else I know is doing this, or the most prevalent, I'll go as soon as this TV program is over. Of course, I never went. I didn't know any other way to deal with this conflicting. mental energy except to redirect my conscious attention on what I was trying to accomplish. I really wanted to get to 5 miles by the end of the summer. I found that sometimes my desire was stronger than the conflict. As a result, I managed to get my running shoes on, actually step outside and start running. However, more times than not, my conflicting and distracting thoughts caused me to stay put. In fact, in the beginning stages, I estimate that two-thirds of the time I was unable to get past the conflicting energy. The next problem I encountered was that when I started approaching the point where I was able to run 1 mile, I was so thrilled with myself that it occurred to me I was going to need an additional mechanism to get me to the 5 miles. I reasoned that once I got to the point where I could run 2 or maybe 3 miles, I'd be so overwhelmingly pleased with myself that I wouldn't feel any need to fulfill my 5 mile objective. So I made a rule for myself. You could call it the 5 mile rule. If I manage to get my running shoes on and get outside in spite of all the conflicting thoughts trying to talk me out of it, I committed myself to running at least one step farther than the last time. I ran, it was certainly all right if I can more than one step further, but it couldn't be less than one step, no matter what. As it turns out, I never broke this rule, and by the end of the summer, I made it to 5 miles. This is something that I can relate to the book by Rhonda Bryans, and the name of the book you must maybe some of you have gone through it. That is The Secret. It is about law of attraction and the manifestation. Okay, what you seek is seeking you kind of situation, right? You're giving clear instructions to universe and to yourselves that ultimately you are achieving the thing that you thought is unachievable or impossible for that matter, right? But then something really interesting and completely unanticipated happened before I got there. As I get closer to fulfilling my 5 mile objective, little by little, the conflicting thoughts began to dissipate. Eventually, they didn't exist at all. At that point, I found that if I wanted to run, I was completely free to do so without any mental resistance, conflict, or competing thoughts. Given what struggle it had been, I was amazed to say at least the result. I went on to run on a very regular basis for the next 16 years. For those of you who may be interested, I don't run so much now because 5 years ago I decided to start playing ice hockey again. Hockey is an extremely strenuous sport. Sometimes I play as many as 4 times a week. Considering my age over something and the level of exertion the sport requires, it usually takes me a day or two to recover. It doesn't leave much room for running anymore. Now if you take these experience and put them into the context of what we now understand about the nature of beliefs, there are a number of observations we can make. Initially, my desire to be runner had no foundation of support in my mental system. In other words, there was no other source of energy and energized concept demanding expression consider consistent with my desire. I actually had to do something to create that support, to create a belief that I'm a runner, required that I create a series of experiences consistent with the new belief. Remember that everything we think, say, or do contributes energy to some belief in our mental system. Each time I experienced a conflicting thought and was able to successfully refocus on my objective with enough conviction to get me into my running shoes and out the door, I added energy to the belief that I am a runner. And just as important, I inadvertently drew energy away from all the beliefs that would argue otherwise. I say inadvertently because there are various techniques specifically designed to identify and deactivate conflicting beliefs. But at that time in my life, I didn't understand the underlying dynamics of the process of transformation I was going through. So it wouldn't have occurred to me to avail myself of some techniques. Now I can effortlessly, from a mental perspective, express myself as a runner because I am a runner. That energized concept is now a functioning part of my identity. When I first started out, I happened to have a number of conflicting beliefs about running. As a result, I needed the technique of self-discipline to get one. Now I don't need self discipline because when I'm already good at it, is what I'm assuming is written over here. When our beliefs are completely aligned with our goals or desire, there's no source of conflicting energy. This is something that we can take a note from this. Hmm. Just give me 1 second. All right. If there is no source of conflicting energy, then there is no source of distracting thoughts, excuses, rationalization, justification, or mistakes, conscious or subconscious. Okay, great. I hope you're getting the gist of it and how important it is, right? Beliefs can be changed, and it's possible to change one belief, then it's possible to change any belief. If you understand that you really aren't changing them, but are only transferring energy from one concept to another. Great. The form of the belief targeted for change remains intact. Therefore, two completely contradictory beliefs can exist in your mental system side by side. But if you drawn the energy out of one belief and completely energize the other, no contradiction exists from a functional perspective. Only the belief that the energy will have the capacity to act as a force on your state of mind, on your perception and interpretation of information and your behavior. Now, the sole purpose of trading mechanically is to transform yourself into a consistently successful trader. If there is anything in your mental environment that's in conflict with the principle of creating the belief that I am a consistently successful trader, then you will need to employ the technique of self discipline to integrate these principles as a dominant functioning part of your identity. Hmm. Right. I think I have to write something from previous one as well. Therefore, two contradictory beliefs. Great. All right. Okay. Let's move ahead. Now, the sole purpose of trading mechanically, okay, we have already gone through this. Okay, let's go through it once again, no worries. Now, the sole purpose of trading mechanically is to transform yourself into a consistently successful trader. If there is anything in your mental environment that's in conflict with the principles of creating the belief that I am a consistently successful trader, then you will need to employ the techniques of self-discipline to integrate these principles as a dominant functioning part of your identity. Once the principles become who you are, you will no longer need self-discipline because the process of being consistent will become effortless. Remember that consistency is not the same as the ability to put on a winning trade or even a string of winning trades for that matter, because putting on a winning trade requires absolutely no skill. All you have to do is guess correctly, which is no different than guessing the outcome of a coin toss. Whereas consistency is a state of mind that once achieved won't allow you to be any other way. Hmm. You won't have to try to be consistent because it will be a natural function of your identity. In fact, if you have to try, it's an indication that you haven't completely integrated the principle of consistent success as dominant, unconflicted beliefs. Okay. All right. That is something that you can take as a what I can say, litmus test for yourself if your belief system is working in correct direction or not. For example, predefining your risk is a step in the process of being consistent. If it takes any special effort to predefine your risk, if you have to consciously remind yourself to do it, if you experience any conflicting thoughts in essence trying to talk you out of doing it, or if you find yourself in a trade where you haven't predefined your risk, then this principle is not dominant functioning part of your identity. It isn't who you are. If it were, it wouldn't even occur to you not to predefine your risk. If and when all of the sources of conflict have been deactivated, there's no longer a potential for you to be any other way. That was once a struggle will become virtually effortless. At that point, it may seem to other people what that you are so disciplined because you can do anything, do something they find difficult. if not impossible. But the reality is that you aren't being disciplined at all. You're simply functioning from a different set of beliefs that compel you to behave in a way that is consistent with your desires, goals, and objectives. Great, 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 great. Now, changing your belief system might take time, but once it will become a part of you, once it you inculcated this very, what I can say, habit or the belief, then it will be as easy as eating a cake, right? Creating a belief in consistency. All right. Shall we go on, or like we should complete it in next chapter or next video? Let's see how many pages are left. It's 143 it's showing, but let's see how many are there. Okay. All right. So there's this questionnaire in the last 2, 3 pages. All right. So shall we do it today or shall we do it in the next one? Consistent belief itself. Okay. It is 2, 3 pages, right? Okay, let's do it. Let's do it now. Okay, creating a belief in consistency. Creating a belief that I am a consistent winner is the primary objective, but like my intention to become a runner, it's too hard, too broad and abstract to implement without breaking it down into a step-by-step process. So what I'm going to do is break this belief down into its smallest definable parts and then give you a plan to integrate each part as a dominant belief. The following sub beliefs are the building thinking like a trader 185 blocks that provides the underlying structure for what it means to be a consistent winner. I'm a consistent winner because I objectively, okay, this is very, very important. So I'm just taking a note of it. All right. I am a consistent winner because I objectively identify my edges. I predefine the risk of every trade. I completely accept risk or I am willing to let go of the trade. I act on my edges without reservation or hesitation. I pay myself as the market makes money available to me. I continually monitor my susceptibility for making errors. I understand the absolute necessity of these principles of consistent success, and therefore I never violate them. Great, a much needed thing. Okay, all right, let's just take a note of it. Just give me 1 second. Okay, in case if you're wondering, I know by now if you have watched any of my other videos, so you know that I'm making notes over here. But in case if you're wondering, someone is new to the video, then what I'm doing in between, I'm just writing down the important stuff. Okay. These beliefs are the 7 principles of consistency. To integrate these principles into your mental system at a function level requires that you purposely create a series of experiences that are consistent with them. This is no different from the boy who wanted to play with dogs or my desire to be a runner. Before he could play with the dog, the boy first had to make several attempts just to get close to one. Eventually, as the balance of energy in his mental system shifted, he could play with dogs without any internal resistance. To become a runner, I had to create the experience of running in spite of everything inside me that argued otherwise. Eventually, as the energy shifted more and more in favor of this new definition of myself, running became a natural expression of my identity. Obviously, what we are trying to accomplish here is far more complex than becoming a runner or petting a dog, but the underlying dynamics of the process are identical. We'll start with a specific objective. The first principle of consistency is the belief I objectively identify my edges. The key word here is objectively. Being objective means there is no potential to define, interpret, and therefore perceive any market information from either a painful or euphoric perspective. All right, makes sense. Great. So let's repeat it once again. I objectively identify my edges. This is the first principle of consistency, is the belief. This belief needs to be there. The way to be objective is to operate out of beliefs that keep your expectation neutral and to always take the unknown forces into consideration. Okay, let's go through it once again. The way to be objective is to operate out of your beliefs that keep your expectation neutral and to always take the unknown forces into consideration. Okay, let's take a note of it. Just 1 second. All right, great. Remember, you have to specifically train your mind to be objective and to stay focused on the now moment opportunity flow. Our minds are not naturally wired. Okay, I'll have to take this down as well. Like, write it down as well. Our minds are not naturally wired to think this way. So we to be an objective observer, you have to learn to think about from the market's perspective. From the market perspective, there are always unknown forces waiting to act on price movement. Therefore, from the market's perspective, every moment is truly unique. Even though the moment may look, sound, or feel exactly same as some moment logged away in your memory bank. The instant you either decide or assume you know what's going to happen next, you'll automatically expect to be right. However, what you know, at least at the rational level of thinking, can only take into consideration your unique past, which may not have any relationship to what is actually happening from the market's perspective. At that point, any market information that is not consistent with your expectation has the potential to be defined and interpreted as painful. To avoid experiencing the pain, your mind will automatically compensate with both conscious and subconscious pain avoidance mechanism. Let's go through this once again because I got zoned out in between. I was thinking about something else. I don't know how. Okay. The instant you either decide or assume you know what's going to happen next, you will automatically expect to be right. However, what you know, at least at the rational level of thinking, can only take into consideration your unique past, which may not have any relationship to what is actually happening from the market's perspective. At that point, any market information that is not consistent with your expectation has the potential to be defined as defined and interpreted as painful. To avoid experiencing the pain, your minds will automatically compensate with both conscious and subconscious pain avoidance mechanism. So you are understanding this chronological order, right? How it is getting started and where exactly it is taking you. For any differences between what you expect and what the market is offering, what you will experience is commonly referred to as an illusion. In a state of illusion, you're neither objective nor connected to the now moment opportunity flow. Okay, all right. And the aim is to remain in the moment. Correct. All right. Just give me 1 second. Mhm. Instead, you become susceptible to committing all the typical training errors, hesitating, jumping the gun, and not predefining. Jumping the gun means basically entering in a trade because of FOMO, fear of missing out. Not predefining your risk, defining your risk, but refusing to take the loss and letting the trade turn into bigger loser. Getting out of a winning trade too soon, not taking any profits out of a winning trade, letting a winning trade turn into a loser, moving a stop closer to your entry point, getting stopped out and watching the market trade back in your favor, or trading too large a position in relationship to your equity. The five fundamental truths about the market will keep your expectations neutral. Focus your mind in the now moment opportunity flow by disassociating the present moment from your past, and therefore eliminate your potential to commit these errors. When you stop making trading errors, you'll begin trusting yourself. As your sense of self trust increases, okay, I'll have to take a note of it. It is a much needed thing because whatever the mm things that is mentioned above, right? The mistakes, like not mistakes, the general trading errors that we generally committed. Every single error is committed by me. Okay, or I'll say was committed by me. Bigger loser, getting out of a winning trade soon, not taking profits in a winning trade, letting a winning trade turn into a loser, and so on and on and on. All right. Now we are seeking the solution, we are getting the solution. So let's take a note of it. All right. The five fundamental truths about the market will keep your expectation neutral. Focus your mind in the now moment opportunity flow by disassociating the present moment from the past and therefore eliminating your potential to commit these errors. Ultimately, we are trying to find out how we can, diminish the error or completely eradicate all the errors that we are committing. When you stop making trading errors, you'll begin trusting yourself. As your sense of self trust increases, so will your sense of self confidence. The greater your confidence, the easier it will be to execute your traits. Act on your edges without reservation or hesitation. Now, when I'll restart my trading, no, this is the rule. This is the goal that I'm going to make. Follow all the rules. Result is a byproduct. Getting profit, money, and everything is a byproduct. My primary goal is to focus and follow all the rules. The five truths will also create a state of mind in which you will genuinely accept the risk of trading. When you genuinely accept the risks, you'll be at peace with any outcome. When you are at peace with any outcome, you'll experience a carefree, objective state of mind. When you make yourself available to perceive and act upon whatever the market is offering you from its perspective at any given now moment, the first objective is to integrate as a dominant belief. I objectively identify my edges. The challenge now is how to get there. Mhm. How do you transform yourself into a person who can consistently think in the market's perspective? The process of transformation starts with a desire you desire and your willingness to refocus on the object of your desire. Self discipline. Desire is a force. It does not have to coincide or agree with anything that you currently believe to be true about the nature of trading. Okay, understood. All right. A clear desire aimed squarely at a specific objective is a very powerful tool. You can use the force of your desire to create an entirely new version or dimension to your identity. Okay, a clear desire aimed squarely at a specific objective is a powerful tool. You can use the force of your desire to create an entirely new version of or dimension to your identity. Shift energy between two or more conflicting concepts or change the context or polarity of your memories from negative to positive. This is something that I need outside trading as well in my life, is what I feel like. Okay, all right, all right. And I'm working in this direction. I'm sure you are familiar with the saying, make up your mind. The implication of making up your minds is that we decide exactly what we desire with so much clarity, absolutely no lingering doubts, and with so much conviction that literally nothing stands in our way, either internally or externally. If there is enough force behind our resolve, it's possible to experience a major shift in our mental structure virtually instantaneously. Deactivating internal conflicts is not a function of time, it is a function focused desire, although it can take a considerable amount of time to get to the point where we really make up our minds. Right. Otherwise, in the absence of extreme clarity and conviction, the technique of self discipline over time will do the job quite nicely, if, of course, you are willing to use it. To get there, you must make up your mind. Okay. All right. How can we make up our mind? Let's just think about it. Hmm. With as much conviction and clarity as possible, that more than anything else, you desire consistency. Okay. The state of mind of trust, confidence, and objectivity from your trading. This is okay. All right. This is necessary because you're like most traders, you're going to be up against some very formidable conflicting forces. For example, if you have been trading to get high from the euphoria of catching the, what I can say, catching a big move, to impress your family and friends, to be a hero, to fulfill an addiction to random rewards, to be right about your predictions, or for any other reason that has nothing to do with being consistent, then you'll find to force of these other motivation will not only act as an obstacle, making the trading exercise I am about to give you very difficult, but it could be very well be strong enough even to keep you from doing the exercise at all. Okay, all right. So that means I'll have to leave all these things behind to execute that exercise. And why it is important to execute an exercise? Because I want to be a consistently profitable trader. Remember the boy who had no desire to be like the other children and interact with dogs? In essence, he decided to live with the active contradiction between his minimally charged positive belief that not all dogs are dangerous and his core negatively charged belief that all dogs are dangerous. He had the ability to perceive friendly dogs, but at the same time found it impossible to interact with them. Unless he desires to change it, the imbalance of energy between these two beliefs will stay exactly as it is for his entire life. To even start the process, you have to want consistency so much that you would be willing to give up all the other reasons, motivation, or agendas you have for training that aren't consistent with the process of integrating the beliefs that create consistency. A clear, intense desire is an absolute prerequisite if you're going to make the process work for you. Okay, by this, we are coming to the end of this video. And in this video, we have learned about so many things, including why, having a mental structure or positively mentally, positively charged mental structure, and how can we take the exercise into account, why exercise is very important to become a profitable trader, consistently profitable trader to be very precise. Now, in the next, I can say, in the next video, we are going to cover what exactly is the exercise. Today, we learned about why the exercise is needed. Okay. Now, in the next one, learning to trade an edge like a casino. Exercise is what we are going to cover in the next video, and that is going to be the last video in this series for this particular book. We'll continue the series of covering all the trading psychology related books, and we'll start with some other book. But for this book, the next video is going to be probably the last one and the most important one. So stay tuned. In case if you have come so far, so leave a like and comment, and if any piece of advice or any suggestions are there, leave it in the comment. Anything that you want to add or anything in which you want more clarity and you want me to make a dedicated video on, post it in the comment section itself. Okay, so once again, thank you so much for being here, and we'll meet next time. Till then, please take care. Thank you so much, universe. Thank you so much, Radharanji. Peace out.